Canto 8, Chapter 3 is a description of
The mic is not working. We forgot to start it. It's not working. Perfect.
Canto 8, Chapter 3 is where we find the prayers of Gajendra in relation to Gajendra Moksha, which is Chapter 2 of Canto 8. Now, I've been in Virginia, but here we're not in Virginia anymore. We're in Baltimore. So I think I should give a little background, which I've been doing in Virginia, but a little background would be nice. How far back should we go? In Canto 2 and Canto 3, in both places, there's a description of Sarga and Visarga. Sarga is the creation by Lord Vishnu, and Visarga is the subcreation by Lord Brahma. That is Vishnu from the state of dormant into all Prakriti and the whole darkness in all directions. No sun, no moon, low electricity, darkness in all directions, nothing. And then the wheel of time, Kala Chakra, moves, and it's time for creation. All right. And when it's time for creation, things start to move. The force behind things moving is Icha Shakti. Everything moved by the potencies of the Supreme. So in this case, the Supreme is identified as Vishnu in Cantos 2 and Canto 3. But Vishnu is a portion of a plenary portion, or Vishnu is an expansion of the original personality of Godhead. The original personality of Godhead, we know from Srimad Bhagavatam, is Krishna. And other scriptural references. It's Ishvara Parama Krishna. Ishvara Parama Krishna. Satchitananda Vigraha. Anadir Adir Govinda Sarvakarana Parama. That's
Someone is at the front door.
Really? Someone's at the front door. If that keeps happening, we probably should leave the front door open. Mataji, relax. Because otherwise, how about this? Everybody that's seated, move forward on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Move forward. Because people will come fashionably late and they'll need a place to sit. So she doesn't have to conduct traffic or something. Okay. Very good. Are you going to be able to see the screen so we can chant the verse? You good at Sanskrit? No? We'll try. In a little while, we're going to try. Try again. Third time. Creation, subcreation, Vishnu is an expansion of the original personality of Godhead. That's in, and then in second canto and in third canto, what Vishnu does and what Brahma does are described in different language, but the same activity, creation. And after creation comes filling up the universe with living entities, because that's what the creation is for. So there's Prajapatis that are expansions of Lord Brahma and empowered persons to expand the species of different species. That's a very interesting procedure. And then once filled, then comes how to govern the creation. Yeah. How to govern creation is arranged for by the Manus, the laws givers of mankind. For human society to be properly governed, there's laws, and then there's the law enforcement people. That's but the laws first, the laws. So Manu makes the laws, and the first of the 14 Manus, his name is, start with an S, who knows his name?
Swayambhu.
Very good. And Swayambhu Manu has two daughters and three daughters and two sons. And one of those sons is Uttanapada. And Uttanapada is later described as being the father of who? Dhruva. Dhruva. You know the story of Dhruva. He has a father, Uttanapada. But Uttanapada has a father. He's Swayambhu Manu. Swayambhu Manu has a father, Lord Brahma. And Brahma has a father, Lord Vishnu. So, in addition to, I'm mentioning this because it's important for Canto 8. He has a second son, Priyavrata. Priyavrata is mentioned in several places, but in 8th canto, we hear about additional Manus besides the original, or the first of the 14 Manus. And some of those Manu 2, 3, and 4, they are sons of Priyavrata. No, Priyavrata must have lived a long time, and then what to speak of his son, because the duration of the life of Manu is really long. 71 cycles of the 4 yugas. Like even one of the 4 yugas, or the cycle of 4 yugas is really long. A lot of one with so many zeros behind it, and there's 71 of those for each Manu. So at the beginning, after describing the descendants of Swayambhu Manu in many ways, because they're 2 daughters, Akuti and Prasuti, and Devahuti, 3 daughters. So there, all those descriptions are found. And then we're going to move on to the 8th canto. The 8th canto, in the question-answer format, Maharaj Parikshit asked a question. You mentioned Swayambhu Manu, but there's 13 others. Could you give their names, a little bit of the histories, the lineage? So that's canto 8, from that starting question. And then we move on to canto 8, chapter 2, and we hear of Tamasa Manu, who is one of the sons of Priyavrata, going way back to sons of Swayambhu Manu. And Priyavrata's son Tamasa has become the one of the Manu number 4 of the 14. And then so there's 2 chapters dedicated to him and some important events happened during his rule as Manu. And one of those things that was really important that happened during his rule was in the south of India, in Dravida Desh, there was a Pandya king named Indradumna, according to Bhaktivinoda Thakur. It's not in the Bhagavatam. According to Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he was in the lineage from the Pandavas, but living in the southernmost parts of India. And he was a great devotee of Vishnu. His Vishnu Bhakti, he was a Vaishnava. And very, very, very dedicated Vaishnava. So dedicated that in the course of time, he wanted to just singularly, so he turned his kingdom over to his son, and then he went to the forest to engage himself in not just tapasya, but specifically worship of Lord Vishnu, Vishnu Bhakti. And he had taken certain vows in the forest. One of those vows was Monavrata. He had a vow of worship and not speaking anything. And he was absorbed in devotional trance or meditation, performing his worship when who would come along but one great sage, Angira. Angira or Agastya?
Augustine.
Agastya. 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 And many followers. And Agastya took exception. What? You're a king and you don't know how to receive a guest? He's in meditation, he's in samadhi with a vow of silence. But somehow Agastya didn't put the two and two together. He came up with 16 or something and said, you're an offender. I curse you. You become a dull elephant. And that's what happened. So King Indradumna, great Vaishnava, in his next life became an elephant. And so now we're moving into the beginning parts of chapter 2 of Canto 8. In the beginning parts, we find this description of where he was, where as an elephant, he was situated along Trikuta mountain, and Trikuta mountain near the ocean of milk. Now, yesterday some questions came up after the class, so I did a whole bunch of research. I'm just sharing with you that research as I shared with the devotees yesterday evening. Where is this Trikuta mountain in the ocean of milk? So I was with the mistaken assumption, I didn't say it, but I just have in my mind thinking, ocean of milk means where Garbhodakshay Vishnu resides. Ocean of milk. And in the middle of the ocean of milk is a white island, Sweetadweep, where Garbhodakshay Vishnu and the goddess of fortune, Lakshmi, and it's where the demigods go when they have a problem. They go to the shore of the milk ocean and they offer prayers, etc. They can't enter, but they offer their prayers. So I just assumed. So some question came after the class, and I spent substantial time researching and came up with the following conclusion. There are multiple references to Trikuta, some in the celestial region, some in Bhumandala region. One reference, Sanatana Goswami writes, and he's describing, it's in Hari Bhakti Vilas, he's describing deity worship, and he describes there are three places where it's an excellent source for carving of deities, and one of them is Trikuta, which means, humans can go there. So it's not, where is this Trikuta? Three mountain peaks. One of gold, one of silver, one of stone, iron. And how big is the mountain? Humongous. There's no such mountain on the earthly plane. Even the Himalayas, it's Mount Everest, it's not that big. Big. So where is this place somebody can guess, because I couldn't find any authority that said this is the place that Gajendra was. He was at Trikut Mountain by the side of the Milk Ocean, and he was the king of elephants, wasn't just an elephant, and he was roaming around as elephants roam around in a jungly type of habitat. And he had some friends, and he had some um, consorts, some ladies, some female elephants. And they were doing this, and the description is very beautiful. It sounds like heaven. And there's reference that there's heavenly damsels with fragrance that smelled like, it was intoxicating, the fragrance of their bodies. So, heaven. But then there's references in the fifth canto of Bhagavatam that in Jambudweep, which is on the earthly plane, there are places where the celestial damsels also visit. So nice. And so it could be, who knows where it could be. But it was a nice place. And as they were moving about, he became thirsty, and he found a lake, according to the 8th canto, chapter 2, was a lake that was created by Varuna. And so he entered the lake, his friends entered the lake, the female elephants entered the lake, and they were sporting in the lake. And he was drinking water and doing what elephants do when they get in water, taking baths and so forth. And then suddenly, danger, an alligator or crocodile grabbed his leg. You're in my lake. And so there was a struggle, to shake the crocodile off. No good. And then, so another detail, there was a battle. And neither was winning, but the battle lasted, according to the Bhagavatam, for 1,000 years. Now, whether it's celestial years or earthly years, it's a long battle. Doesn't specify. Again, research and doesn't specify. Wherever it was, long time. And in the course of that long time, he was getting tired. Probably hungry too. A little sleepy too. 1,000 years with a crocodile in your leg. So he, at the end of chapter 2, he comes to the stage where he realized, I'm finished. The crocodile was becoming stronger, or at least not becoming weak, and he was becoming weak because it was not his natural habitat. So then a little light went on, super soul light went on. And super soul from his previous life came into his mind his worship of Vishnu, which he was deeply, like in samadhi, he was absorbed in. And he was very learned as a king. So in the second verse of chapter 3 of Canto 8, his prayers begin. So that's what we've been doing before coming here. That's a little background. So as King Interdumna, now in the form of an elephant, remembering his previous life. So in some places it's called Gajendra's prayers. In some places it's Interdumna Stotras. It's Interdumna's prayers. Same. As a king, he would pray. So here's a little summary of what we did so far. We're covered, discussed about his prayers. The first prayer is just simply speaking or praying or glorifying the position of the personality Godhead Vishnu, the glories of Vishnu. And then verse numbers 2 and 3 is a description about the relationship between the source of everything and everything, or Prakriti in particular, material creation. Speaking of Vishnu being the source of Prakriti, and as he expands Prakriti, he's not different than his own energy. So there's a non-difference feature between the energetic and his own energy. And there's also a difference feature. The difference is he has his own existence. He is not the creation. He's not touched by the creation. He moves about. He can move about in the creation. He's everywhere present in the creation by his energy, but he has a separate existence. So the oneness and difference. Yeah. And the next verse just takes that same. At a certain point, he withdraws the creation by his will. As he extends it, he can withdraw it. And when he does withdraw it, it still exists, but it's not in the manifest state. It's in a dormant state within the body of Vishnu. Then Gajendra makes this statement that the universe is eternally existing either in the manifest or in the unmanifest state, but it's becoming manifest. It's just a state of existence. And the unmanifest is just a state of existence of the same thing. Prakriti in its unmanifest, vyakta and avyakta states. And he remains unchanged. And then there's another detail that his existence, in part, aside from the energies expanding and withdrawing, he is the witness, upadrashta. He's the all ever-present witness in all spaces, in all times, in all places. He's the witness. He's observing everything. And now comes one of the reasons behind these prayers. Help. He makes an appeal for protection. We discussed this a little bit, more than a little bit. One can make an appeal to the source of everything with selfishness, like, I want. So you have a big warehouse, give me some of what I want. Om Jai Jagadisha Hare. That goes on. Some persons have that idea, and their worship is their worship with the idea to get what they want. And it's not bad, but it's one of the approaches to the Supreme. And there are others that are their primary contemplation is surrender. And in that primary mood of surrender, according to our acharyas, there's 6 angas or limbs or aspects of that surrender. And one of those 6 is that one seeks the protection of the Supreme. In other words, material is I protect myself. And oh, by the way, I also do some worship of the Supreme. But I got my backside, and that's my business. And I also worship. So in this case, Gajendra, having been Indradumna Maharaj in his previous life, he's in that surrender position. He's seeking protection from the personality of Godhead as a principle of his surrender. Yes, it's about his body and his well-being, because he's about finished. His body's going to be kaput, and he's going to have to leave his body because this crocodile's got a hold of his leg and we can't get rid of him. So it's in relation to his body, but it's seeking shelter and protection. It's surrender. So it's a key point for our lives. Let's go to Bhagavad Gita, and you all know the verse. Sarvadharmam Parityaja. Sarvadharmam Parityaja. Ekam Sharanam Vraja. Aham Sarva Papebhyo. Mokshayasya Vimasyaha. Essential verse, conclusion of the entire Bhagavad Gita, 1866. Leave aside all other avenues of spirituality and the teachings of Dharma and this and that. Leave them to the side and just take one thing. The one thing is surrender. So what is surrender made up of? One of them is protection. Without listing what the six are, protection. So that's what he's doing. As the king, now he has the consciousness of the king in the body of an elephant. And he's seeking protection. But it's not the selfish kind, it's part of the surrender kind. When his body is taken away, he can't do a service. So he wants his body to not be taken away. So he's surrendered fully. And verification of that is what happens at the end of his prayers. Lord Vishnu comes and he rescues Gajendra. That's the Gajendra moksha, but not just chops the alligator, but Lord Vishnu, manifests a four-armed in the likeness of Vishnu form, a Sarupya Mukti form, and he ascends to the spiritual realm in Avaikuntha Vimana. He goes back to Godhead. So he's not in mixed devotion, he's in pure devotion. Let's say it again. Pure devotion can include seeking protection. Even in terms of, the covering of the body. But in the mood of service is different than the mood of, I like my body. I want it to be a nice one, please. So in that mood, he's offering prayer, the helpless prayers. That's what we've been discussing. And now I'm going to go to the next one of the prayers. So that's what's on the screen, yes? So we'll try to recite responsively. Oh yeah. In text number 6, which we discussed yesterday, that there's a comparison between who understands Vishnu. Basically, only devotees understand Vishnu, but he doesn't say it that way. He says, as this Gajendra, as an actor on a stage has a costume, and the people in the audience can't tell who the actor on the stage is because of his costume. Similarly, even great sages and demigods, they don't understand Vishnu. What to speak of ordinary people, they don't understand Vishnu. And yet, he's within everything, he's within them. And yogis, they search within themselves for Vishnu, but they may not find him. And he can be seen when he discloses himself. Only then he can be seen and understood. So that's a bhakti principle. And then again, his appeal, I have my respects unto him. Okay. Yes. Okay, text 7. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Drikshava Padam Dusumangalam. Vibhukta Sangha Munaya Susadavaha Ranchaloka Vratam Avranam Vane Bhutatma Bhuta Subhidya Same Gati. One more time. Dadrikshavoya Padam Sumangalam Sangamunaya Susadavaha Charanchaloka Vratam Avranam Vane Tatma Bhuta Subhidya Same Gatim. Renunciates and great sages who see all the living beings equally, who are friendly to everyone, and who flawlessly practice in the forest the vows of brahmacharya, vanaprastha, and sannyas, desire to see the all auspicious lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. May that same Supreme Personality of Godhead be my destination. So, seeking protection, but seeking his shelter as his destination. Because who knows? He may survive this attack, he may not survive this attack. He's speaking of what he was doing in his previous life as Indraduma, going to the forest, wishing to see the Supreme Personality of Godhead. See doesn't mean with these material eyes, but spiritually see the person, Lord Vishnu. And he wants to hit the Supreme Lord Vishnu as his ultimate destination. And here's Srila Prabhupada's purport. This verse describes the qualification for devotees or persons highly elevated in spiritual consciousness. Devotees are always equal to everyone, seeing no distinction between lower and higher classes. Pandita Samadarshanaha. They look upon everyone as a spirit soul who is part and parcel of the Supreme Lord. Thus, they are competent to search for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, understanding that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the friend of everyone, Suradam Sarvabhutanam. They act as friends of everyone on behalf of the Supreme Lord, making no distinction between one nation and another, or one community and another. They preach Krishna consciousness, the teachings of Bhagavad Gita everywhere. Thus, they are competent to see the lotus feet of the Lord. Such preachers in Krishna consciousness are called Paramahamsas, as indicated by the word Vimukta Sangam, Vimukta Sangha. They have nothing to do with material conditions. One must take shelter of such a devotee in order to see the Supreme Personality of Godhead. A few things. In all of these prayers, not once does Gajendra mention Vishnu by name. We discussed this a little bit yesterday. Jiva Goswami writes, in contradiction to some impersonalists who refer to Gajendra's prayers and say, aha, just see, impersonal. He's worshiping the Supreme who is one everywhere in all things, and no mention of form, no mention of name, no mention of qualities. There's some activities of creation, but that creation comes about from the oneness of everything, and so forth. And Jiva Goswami points out the outcome doesn't indicate what they say. The outcome is Lord Vishnu comes, because Lord Vishnu knows, and Lord Vishnu delivers him. And Lord Vishnu awards him a spiritual form with 4 arms, and descends into Vaikuntha Vimana and takes him to Vaikuntha. So it's not impersonal. It's all one. And although he's not mentioning it by name. He's indicating his qualities and characteristics, but not by name. And another feature is to reconfirm that when he was asking for protection, it's that the protection is spiritual and material. So although it's in relation with the body, it's spiritual. And it's spiritual indicated by this particular reference. He wants his place as his destination. His spiritual abode is his destination. So it's a spiritual aspiration. Protection from the onslaught of material existence and entrance into the spiritual realm. That's what he wants. His spiritual desire. And then this Suradam Sarva Dehinam, the equal vision characteristic is found in a number of places in Bhagavad Gita. It's the characteristic of a self-realized soul. This characteristic of a self-realized soul is he sees himself and others in terms of the soul, not in terms of the covering. Because in terms of the covering, how many differences are there? Besides, human species, there's certainly differences within or amongst the human species. One group, another group, this other nation, another race, that's about species. There's one of the presentations at universities that's popular has a nice title called Gita Values. And the little background on what's Gita Values anyways. It's just a nice name. It could be unlimited numbers of Gita Values. But there were 6, and it had to do with the history, had to do with an Oxford University professor and the chairman of the GBC and a few devotees that move around and teach Bhagavad Gita and a few people that are in the sannyas ashram and they reach out in the public and got together and it came about as a result of the chairman of the GBC wanting some guidance and direction, scriptural guidance and direction, how to do his services being the chairman of the GBC. The devotee was Shesha Prabhu. So these persons collaborated and came up with 6. And the first one is Samadarshana. It's a value. It's a behavior, but behavior is resting upon value. And although there's so many differences, how to see the oneness amongst the so many differences. And that's on that spiritual vision, Samadarshana. Even on the spiritual non-difference, there's differences. There's varieties of rasa. And with that variety of rasa, there's varieties of spiritual form. In the spiritual realm, there's varieties. There's varieties here because there's varieties there. This is a reflection of the original. So varieties are fine. But the oneness is then the spiritual essence that's amongst the coverings, bodies and minds and emotions and desires and so forth. There's a spark of life, there's a oneness amongst all living entities, and seeing that relating accordingly, while seeing differences, while honoring differences, respecting differences, seeing the sameness. And that's very nice. That's an essential spiritual quality, which just goes back to this purport. Without, the way the Prabhupada is saying is without that, then there's not spiritual progress. Vidyavanaya sampane, brahmaniga vihastini, shunachaiva, sopakicha, pandita samadarshana. And a symptom of that make a distinction between a conditioned soul and a Brahman realized soul is seeing differences, but seeing the oneness, the sameness, the spirituality within all those differences. And that brings one to the spiritual platform. Without being on the spiritual platform, how is one going to be able to see Vishnu? If one is disrespectful from one living entity to another living entity based upon the coverings are different, and having discord because the coverings are different, how's the personality of Godhead going to be pleased? He won't be pleased. And if he's not pleased, how's he going to reveal himself? So it's not like exactly he's a lawyer building a case, but it's just appreciation of the glories of the personality of Godhead and the glories of those who are in relation to the personality of Godhead, the devotees. As he's been honoring the personality of Godhead, now he's honoring the devotees. And he wants to be among those devotees. He wants to attain his position in the spiritual realm with the Lord Vishnu and in his destination in Vaikuntha realm. That's his aspiration. And that one last thing. Remember the context. He's got a crocodile on his leg for 1,000 celestial years, struggling and struggling. Are we going to be, struggle and struggle, and are we going to have that kind of consciousness? Or how to have such kind of consciousness? In practice and association. And then you practice Prabhupada's teaching. You practice at something consistently, it becomes second nature. Like riding a bicycle. Have you learned to ride a bicycle yet? Yes? When you started to learn to ride a bicycle, was it easy or a little awkward? Yeah. But practice, and you can ride a bicycle. Now, I haven't ridden a bicycle in a long time, but I know if I got on a bicycle, I could ride the bicycle, no problem. Now, that's a motor skill, but you practice, it becomes second nature. So, like the motor skills, second nature, so also spiritual. Spirit because it's already within. Motor skills, capacity, unless there's some muscular functional difficulty, the capacity is within. Simply the spiritual capacity is within. You practice, it becomes second nature. So we practice sadhana bhakti to come to sadhya, the stage of maturity of sadhana. And that's what happens here with Gajendra. By practice, so diligent was his practice in his previous life, it carried over to his next life. Compliments of super soul that prompted him to remember. Okay, let's see if there's some comments or questions. Some interaction would be nice. Yeah. You were done with that? No?
Thank you, Maharaj. So, Gajendra was asking for protection from the Supreme Lord, and you mentioned that seeking protection still remains on the platform of pure devotion.
Can.
Can.
Yeah.
Okay. So my question is it based on one's intention? Like, I just want sufferings to go away so that I can go back to enjoying as I was doing previously. That's a material conception.
Yes.
But here Gajendra was not in that conception, but he was seeking protection, but still keeping the Supreme Lord as the destination.
It's a fine line. And the line is consciousness. You're saying intention, but it's consciousness. You could use either, but his intention was to serve. And so he was protected. His motive, his purpose was Krishna should be pleased. That, let's go to Rupa Goswami's super excellent definition. And it's serving so that Krishna is pleased. In such a way, Krishna will smile. Then it's on the spiritual side, whatever it might be, protection included.
Thank you, Chris.
I was struck in this verse. It says, renunciates and great sages who see all living beings equally, who are friendly to everyone, and who flawlessly practice in the forest the vows of brahmacharya, vanaprastha, and sannyas, desire to see the all auspicious lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. What was striking to me is the conspicuous absence of the Grihastha, given that in his
What's absent?
the Grihastha order.
Oh.
So I was wondering if you would much desire to elaborate a little bit for, especially for, being given that most devotees
After husband.
are Grihasthas.
Well, it wasn't a slight. It wasn't, intentional. Sorry, Grahastas, you're not eligible. That's not at all scripture, nor is it Prabhupada's emphasis. So, why did he admit it? I can't say. But it's not an ordinary, it's not a way that we should take it. Is there a reason behind the omission? If there is, I don't know what it is. But it's not a smearing or a demeaning kind of omission. But in the sixth canto of the Bhagavatam, there's a very celebrated verse that many of the devotees know. It's spoken by Yamaraj, where he indicates the 12 authorities. And in reciting what those 12 authorities are, Prabhupada would sometimes make a point to say how many of these authorities are grihasthas. Going through one by one by one by one by one. There's some that aren't, but many of them are. Most of them are. But on the stage of topmost authority. Okay.
Thank you. I didn't take it as a slight. I took it as maybe by this kind of saying Grihastha eventually leading up to Vanaprastha.
But it's a distinction of ashram. The duties of a grihastha and the duties of a vanaprastha are not the same. There's some similarity, there's some difference. Therefore, a separate ashram.
Krishna. Yeah. I understood a little bit about Sambadarshana as seeing with equal vision at a spiritual level. Could you please provide some more guidance on how to practice that vision with some examples, if you like, how the consciousness will be based on different situations, like person is acting this way, person is acting that way, or person based on level of consciousness of other person. How do you see them equally?
Well, two things. Yeah, your specific question is how do you cultivate? And one answer is by cultivating bhakti, it will come. Knowledge and detachment automatically come unto one who is engaged in bhakti. That's the fundamental teaching of the Bhagavatam. So we don't need a separate endeavor, we need bhakti, and then it will come. And a second response is from time to time we get stuck in differences of personality, of culture, of emphasis, of this and that. And we find ourselves getting stuck. That's a good time that we step back from being stuck and consider, how did I get stuck? And so it's focusing on a position of forgetfulness of the personality of Godhead, what's pleasing to the personality of Godhead, and the spiritual foundation and basis of all things. So then that's a practice. You step back from the negative emotion thing and how did I get here? And what's the right position to have instead? So you go to knowledge, stepping back and reflecting on the situation. And the authority that you go to when you reflect is scripture.
Relation permanence. The Sharanagati or surrender, general recommendation is you take via a devotee with Guru or you surrender through, like even Shiva Vaishnavas, they through Lakshmi Devi, you surrender to the Lord. But in this case, Gajendra is surrendering directly to the Lord. So, is there a different instance? Really?
What's your question? I got the preamble. The question is,
He's surrendering through, does he has some guru through which he is surrendering?
well, it's not in his elephant body. There's no guru, but his previous life. So he's in his previous life consciousness, although he's in an elephant body. In his previous life, there was guru. The name of guru is not indicated in the two, but he had it. That's how he got trained, is from someone who trained him, guru who trained him. No name mentioned. Okay, yes.
This is just a clarification from yesterday's discussion, yesterday evening, about the Purusha avatar is not having their abodes in the spiritual realm.
For that discussion,
Yeah, some devotees asking me about
afterwards,
So the Sri Sampradaya, they worship Lord Narayana,
yes,
and Lord Narayana is Karpodakshay Vishnu or Kshirodakshay Vishnu.
no. Narayana Vaikuntha is not Garbhodakshay Vishnu, Kshirodakshay Vishnu. Kshirodakshay Vishnu, Garbhodakshay Vishnu are expansions of Narayana. So they may worship, while the deity is Narayana, their meditation, their bhakti, their ishta, day personality may be Vishnu. But the basis and support and shelter of Vishnu is Narayan. He's Lakshmi Narayan.
He is in the Vaikuntha realm.
He's in the Vaikuntha realm.
So Sri Vaishnavas worshipping Lord Narayan, their destination is Vaikuntha.
Yeah, they exactly, they're different. There's a lot of similarity, but there's some differences even among Sri Vaishnavas. The understanding of Narayana is the supreme, and Narayana has his expansions, and Vishnu, the Purusha avatars, are his expansions. And they're not in Vaikuntha, they're in this material world. Creation is within the material realm, and Vishnu does the creation.
Krishna, very good question.
Hello.
Thank you for the wonderful class. Maharaj, I'm having some question.
Okay.
In a family, if one person is a devotee and the other rest of them are not a devotees, but is there any chance they can become a devotee in this life? Or
Why not?
in the future? But they are in association with the non-devotees?
Yeah. The whole world is filled with non-devotees. Too many. So many.
Do the devotee needs to do something with non-devotees, like in the family?
Within a family, there's a principle of not just family, but a principle of being with others is respect. So if one is a qualified devotee, they respect other living entities on the platform of spirit soul, recognizing there's differences of coverings and differences of realizations and there's differences. But the fundamental is the respect of the soul within. So on the basis of fundamental respect, then depending upon the family, depending upon the circumstance, one may do all kinds of things without transgressing what would be pleasing to Lord Krishna, Lord Krishna. Like, eating on vegetables is not something that a Vaishnava would do. Even family members, non-devotee family members may do. But at the same time respecting. So they've got their habits, and I'm not going to just spit on them or, snub them or, treat them or make snide comments or condescend or, but set an example. And a very clear line. So, and then another part of the answer to this question is it depends. It depends on the person and are they antagonistic or are they just what's the dynamic? But in any case, never depart from respect. You hold that, and then there's an opportunity for that having that quality feeling accepted by the other party. And then the willingness, but if there's unacceptance, then there's pushback. You just made a wall. So it depends how what it can look like.
Sometimes if I'm telling something very spiritually, they don't take it and they get frustrated. So is a better thing to tell them or not?
It depends. I'm a senior citizen, but I have two surviving sisters, and I don't push anything. If they ask, fine. And I'm careful how much I say, even when they ask.
That's it. And they're wasting time, maybe.
But if you push again, they're going to push back. Resentment. You think you're up there and we're down here. I know. They may not say like that, but they feel that. So be very careful. Go on the side of respect, and then be a nice example of your speech and your actions. And without being super rigid. So, it depends. When some of my family members departed this world, but there were times when I visited home and I ate what I ate, and they ate what they ate. And I didn't make a big issue about what they ate, and they didn't make a big issue about what I ate. But I wasn't going to eat what they ate. And they respected it. I was respecting. So by that, some emotional points were earned. So that in eagerness, because of being respectful, they could be curious rather than stay away because he's going to chop us or push us or snub us or something. So it depends.
Thank you much. Thank you so much.
So respect and in mode of service, those two, in family, in close relationships. And then Super Soul will give you the understanding according to what's going on, what to say, how to say it, what not to say. You be a role model of what a Vaishnava is. Whatever that may be for you, best you can do that. And Super Soul will give you intelligence, depending upon, it depends kind of circumstances and the personalities and the time and the situation. Ideal is by your good character, they want to know what's going on. They ask questions. And then be careful, don't over answer.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much.
Okay. So, but there's something back here.
Hare Krishna very much. The verse 6 that you had mentioned, I think did last evening, where Gajendra is saying that who can understand you?
Right.
You are like an artist.
Yeah.
I was reminded of Kunti Devi.
Yes.
She says something similar.
And that's right in the first line of the purport.
I didn't read. So I was thinking that these are like the pure devotees. Gajendra was in Samadhi when he got cursed. So he had reached that level, and here Kunti Devi is standing right in front of Krishna, and
Yeah.
they're saying those kind of verses. I was just thinking, like, how much am I dependent on mercy that's flowing into my life, rather than if the pure devotees are saying these things, it's just like a reminder for me that I am fully dependent on the mercy that's
Yeah.
flowing for me to do anything.
Yeah. Pure devotees remind us of who we should be, what we should be like. That's a good sign.
Something similar, a question that I have is that sometimes when I'm praying, I may ask for some indication, and my dull-mindedness, it's hard for me to understand what Krishna may indicate. And I may pray, and still I don't know what steps to take. So, continue praying, or
Yeah. When your receiver's on, the signal will come through. Just keep the receiver on. Keep the inquisitive and the submission. The submission unto the prayer. And as in in elevated consciousness, one may not know what's next, but there's confidence that Krishna will help you understand what to do when the next thing comes. He'll guide, however he guides. Sometimes in different ways.
Maharaj, another question that comes up, and I know that you've touched upon this in several of the classes, but Gajendra's level of consciousness, throughout his sustained kind of distress that he's going through, his level of consciousness from the prayers, we don't see any indication of any fluctuation in his consciousness at all. He's a pure devotee, of course, but I was just trying to take it in a kind of a practical application way for my own life. When we are going through a sustained level of distress, and maybe not as extreme as Gajendra, we are not in a steady state of bhakti
Right.
yet. So our level of consciousness changes,
Yes.
depending on.
Quite frequently.
Yeah, and when we're going through something that is, at a sustained level, there is a level of acceptance that one needs to have, regardless of one's consciousness.
But the acceptance regardless of consciousness,
Yeah.
that's fundamental faith. That can fluctuate according to circumstance. Keep going.
So, I guess, Maharaj, my question is, Gajendra was limited in his ability to do anything. He was physically just, in the hold of.
Yeah.
But we may feel like we have options. We don't feel like we are stuck like that because of our.
Oh, I know lots of people feel that they're stuck. By circumstances which they can't do anything about, whether they can or they can't. They feel stuck. So now,
So my question is, how to have the intelligence to discern, have acceptance, but still be able to act and exercise options. I'm still a little confused about, whether you just accept and not exercise any options, or and just in practical terms. I don't know if my question is clear, Maharaj.
it's not.
Maybe I'm not giving my own hand, but basically what I'm trying to ask is how to have the intelligence.
How to have intelligence. Super soul. Without super soul supplying intelligence, you don't have. So that's the go-to place, super soul, or the supreme. And then if you don't have, then you cultivate focus upon the supreme with, you could add with intention. I'd like to understand what I don't understand. I'd like to know you. And I don't know, get back to yesterday's verse. Great sages and yesterday's verse. Demigods and don't understand. They spend their whole lifetime, but they still don't understand. So the medium of understanding is bhakti. And what's bhakti? They act in such a way Krishna should be pleased. So you follow guidelines of scripture and you act with that purpose behind, as your motivator. And make choices accordingly. And that's what you work with. And as you work with that, and that intention becomes clearer, the devotion becomes clearer and stronger, then you can start to understand things that yesterday I didn't understand. The attachment in devotional service through submission and Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Holiness Ramapada Swami Maharaj ki jai. Mad Bhagavatam.